It was a pleasant surprise to discover that I actually don't hate writing. I just hate writing nonfiction.
Welcome to Our Hen House. This is Jasmin Singer.
This is Mariann Sullivan.
And this is the Hen Report. Our Hen House has 4 podcasts now. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays. The Hen Report, this comes out on Thursdays. And the long form interview on most Fridays. And the Animal Law podcast on the last Friday of the month. And we're on YouTube. So thank you to those of you who are watching us on YouTube. Please subscribe and like us on YouTube. Comment if you'd like.
Even if you hate us. No. If you hate us, you're probably not listening. But even if you hate YouTube, please subscribe.
I'm excited about today because we're going to have a drop by from one of our, as we call it, a wingman, Melanie Joy.
Get it? Wingman.
Yeah, wing woman in this case. Melanie will be joining us shortly to talk about her new book, but it's not what you think it is. You know her for her incredibly well-known and revelatory works like Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. And this is a novel idea, shall we say. So I'm excited about that. So let's get to it. You're feeling kind of, I don't know.
I have Trumpitis. Yeah. The events of the day are really overwhelming me. And I don't know. I imagine there are other people who feel the same way. It's just gotten really, really a lot.
Yeah.
And scary. I don't want to dwell on bad things, but it's scary.
My best friend Erica and I call it TET. She made it up, TET. I think I've said this before, which is Trump exacerbated trauma. And so just throughout the day, we'll just text each other TET. And yeah, there's a lot of tetting lately. Yeah. You know what's so scary about what's going on in, oh, hello, Eugene.
Yeah, Eugene is upset too. He came over too.
He's also going to, for people listening to this and not watching it, if you hear some interruption with the mic, it's Eugene the cat.
Eugene really loves this mic.
He's rubbing himself against it. And he would be mortified if he knew that like millions of people.
Oh my God, he would not. He does not want one other human to ever see him.
I know. So, there he is rubbing against the mic. Okay, and there's his cat butt. Okay, you saw it here first. Can you imagine what he would think if he knew we were looking at his butthole?
The whole thing would horrify him so deeply.
So speaking of horrifying things deeply. The thing that's so horrifying about this, and like I know I'm stating the obvious, but this is really scary. The division between truth and lies in terms of what's being reported has gotten so vast that like it's so alarming that
I mean that's been going on for a long time. But
I know,
it does seem to get worse and worse and worse instead of better.
But with this in particular. With what's going on in LA and the way it's being reported,
well, and now
in
other cities as well.
Yeah. So anyway, it's scary times out there, and we're going to talk about animals because it's also really scary times for animals, and it's no reason for us to not.
It's always
talk about
scary times for animals, and I think that we're either more used to or more sensitive to the idea of the frustration of a whole lot of people not believing the truth or not being aware of the truth or being in denial about the truth, because that's what we live with all the time. And we know how hard it is to fix. So I think when this sort of thing goes on, it just brings up all of that as well. I don't know. It's bad.
All right. Well, we have despite what we just said, we have mostly good news to report.
Yeah, well, that
today.
was kind of deliberate.
Yeah, but this
trying to keep things light. But the first story is not. I just wanted to talk about this because, obviously we're talking a lot about immigration and immigrants and the industry. I mean, as I've mentioned many times, the animal ag industry is, kind of freaked out about all of this because they hire loads and loads and loads of undocumented people. They will be screwed if they have to stop that because they would have to start paying people, a living wage, which they don't want to have to do that. So they have these special visas in agriculture. Clearly, this doesn't, even for plant-based agriculture, this doesn't fix everything for them. But these H-1A visas allow people who have seasonal needs in agriculture to bring people in under these special visas, which, allow them to stay for a certain amount of time. Kind of reminds me of like indentured servants, they're totally beholden to the people who employ them and they can't go anywhere else. And after they work a certain amount of time and they get paid whatever they get paid, then they go back to their home country. It's pretty bad. But the animal ag industry isn't even allowed to use that because it's not seasonal. They torture those animals 24/7, 365. So there's nothing seasonal about it. So they're not eligible for H-1A visas. And my theory, and I have recently seen this article that kind of bears it out, is that, and I think I've heard them mention it too, so I made this up. They're going to try to get H-1A visas or something like them applicable to animal agriculture. So they can bring these people in who will be totally beholden to them, who won't be able to go and get different jobs, and, will work for whatever crap they want to pay them. And that will fix their problem. And I just have no doubt that agriculture is not going to get screwed by what's going on now. They are starting, in California at least, they are starting to do raids on farms. But I think that's just the first step in like creating a crisis that they will then fix by maybe making the visas easier for plant-based agriculture and giving the visas to animal-based, quote-unquote, agriculture. And, there's obviously a solution here, which is that they could pay people a living wage and, higher than a living wage because it's horrible work. And that's how capitalism works, right?
It's
if
unreal.
work is really harder and more brutal and bad, then you pay people more to do it and then they will do it. But that's not what they want to do. They want to find people who have absolutely no options.
This is what they think is like a bandaid fix on something that is rotten to the core in so many ways. Like we're talking about the people without recourse, without safety, without dignity, milking cows 365 days a year. And we're talking about the cows who are forced to produce milk around the clock and their lives and bodies are squeezed for profit.
It's also, it's the psychological toll too, aside from the physical toll. I was talking about this new movie coming out soon, or maybe not that soon. I don't know when it's coming out. On Rising Anxieties, Kenny Torella had written an article about it in Vox about the absolute mental trauma that people in animal ag, particularly slaughterhouse workers he's talking about, undergo. But, all of it is mentally exhausting. There's really high rates of alcoholism, of mental illness, of PTSD. There's this special kind of PTSD, which I forget the initials for, but it's the kind of PTSD that is suffered by people who cause physical harm. And this would, common in soldiers. And all of these things happen to these people. They get paid crap and then they get sent home to their country and they're beholden to the people who they work for. It's really like indentured servants. Except after 7 years of indentured servitude, which, they had in the olden days, you get to leave. These people, it's just like, this is their life. I don't know how they ever get out of it.
Unbelievable. All right, well, let's move to some good news. I want to tell you,
all of the rest of the news.
Let me give you a visual.
It's what I consider good news.
I want to start by painting a picture for you. So just picture me 25 years ago, a college junior, and I was in my little apartment in Brooklyn Heights, my little apartment for college students. And it had a microwave, but no stove. You could use the stove in the building, but I never would do that. I was a vegetarian at the time, and all I ate was not only mac and cheese, but it was like this microwavable kind of mac and cheese. So I had, it was so much waste, because it was in styrofoam, and I had piles and piles and piles of Kraft macaroni and cheese, and that's pretty much what I subsisted on.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had microwavable mac and cheese. I used to get the little packages all the time.
Yeah, no, this was a moment.
Mix on a stove and
yeah, no, for sure. And
I loved it.
And we have the vegan version of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But now Kraft, Heinz, and Notco have teamed up to launch a vegan version of instant mac and cheese cups, which is what I'm referring to here. It's just 3.5 minutes in the microwave.
Right.
You got that nostalgic creamy bite.
Lots of plastic.
It's vegan. Yeah, totally terrible for the environment. So
I'm probably not very healthy, but I want it right now.
Well,
right this minute. Is it for sale now? Because I want to go to the store and get it.
Well, if you do get it,
I bet it's delish.
Give me the empty container because I'm going to try and like create some weird subversive art project from it.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not participating in inflicting that upon the world. They also talk about in this article, which was in on Plant-Based News, they also talk about some other new Kraft Heinz products, including Jello, oat milk chocolate pudding. Yeah, I'm in for
Oh my
that.
God.
Let's see what else. Are you laughing at my cat?
Yeah, I was.
Like it's so he is just really
I love
really
it. Yeah,
really
I
cozy
know.
today.
So yeah, honestly,
Was that? I
convenience.
thought there were more in here too. Like this is a partnership between Kraft Heinz, which is now the same company, and Notco, which
Mhm.
Notco is one of the most successful dairy, quote unquote dairy companies.
Like convenience foods like these are part of how we shift the culture,
Oh,
and
totally.
it's processed and it's corporate, but for busy people, for curious
This is
eaters,
people what
for
people
for
eat.
people like
Then
me when I was 20, it's so great. We'll work on
these
the.
were the choices. There's original and white cheddar, and there's going to be a chipotle. No, the chipotle is going to be a mayonnaise. I want it all, basically.
You want to eat your feelings
I
about
want it
Tet,
all.
eat your Tet feelings. All right, well, let's talk about
That
Switzerland.
was the really big news, I have to say.
Yeah, no, everything from here is downhill.
Yeah.
So, well,
Um,
except for Melanie. Let's talk about Switzerland because it's become the first country in Europe to ban imports of cruelly produced fur, but isn't it a little more complicated than that?
well, yeah, I mean, there's been some criticism of this. I mean, not really criticism. I think this article is from Four Paws, the organization, and it's just saying it could be better, but it's really, really good. They're exempting for some reason fur from traps that are designed to kill instantly, which are Kona bear traps, which do not necessarily kill instantly. So that's really unfortunate. Some lobby was probably in there, but basically, yeah, this is huge. The whole country imposing an import ban on almost all fur. And, it's just like the fur industry is down, and it is a really great time for anybody to be kicking them. And according to this article, worldwide fur production declined by 85% between 2013 and 2023. So it is time to pull the plug.
Yeah.
There are cities in the US that have completely banned the sale of fur. This is the first country in Europe to do this. So I'm
Okay,
excited.
well, I'm excited. It's a solid milestone, but I think that we could do a little better, Switzerland. But yeah,
Oh,
we'll
do
we'll
you? Let's not
celebrate
be
it.
critical. It's probably.
We'll celebrate it. We'll celebrate it. Okay, let's talk about something else to celebrate because I'm super excited about this. A judge has blocked a gag order. Tell us about it
Yeah,
since
well,
you're
this
the
is
lawyer.
so outrageous. So outrageous. And you're all familiar with Zoe Rosenberg, I'm sure. Heard her on the podcast a couple of times. And her trial is coming up for rescuing chickens. And, she's facing a lot of time in prison, though they just dropped the theft charge, which is probably because they want to be able to block certain evidence of the condition of the animals, which would be the defense to the theft charge. But they also are trying to gag her. Which is very, very unusual. It's not like the gag orders are standard in these cases. And the prosecution had sought a gag order prohibiting her from publicly discussing her case ahead of a high-profile felony trial. Yeah, have they heard about the First Amendment? And the judge was kind of outraged, I think. He described the gag order as, I think it was a he, yeah, Kenneth, I assume it's a he, as overbroad and vague by any constitutional standard. And also, like they've been talking about it, her critics have been talking about it. President of the California Poultry Federation described the rescue as a terrorist act. So apparently they're allowed to use language like terrorist act, and she's not allowed to talk about it at all. Just outrageous. So I'm glad that the court did the right thing here.
Yeah, we'll be following this closely. Her trial starts in September.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't understand time anymore. We had a fantastic panel on grassroots activism, and one of the guests we had was, sorry, does your cat have something else to say?
I don't know what is
wait.
going on with my cats today.
I'll wait.
They're very emotional today.
No, that's okay. It's an animal rights podcast. They're animals. They deserve the right to talk. Go ahead. Okay,
No.
they're done.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the people we had on was Carrie LeBlanc, and she talked about the Colorado Parks and Wildlife situation with elephants. And there's been an update on that. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has just refused a permit for elephants to appear at the Renaissance Festival near Larkspur, citing a state law that bars performing elephants under the guise of entertainment. So this decision follows pressure from advocacy groups like Animal Activist Legal Defense Project, arguing
Yeah,
that
the Animal Activist Legal Defense Project, I think were the lawyers there, but also I think Carrie mentioned that PETA had been involved, and of course Compassion Works International, which she represented, was involved, and I don't know, there might have been others too. I don't want to like leave anybody out, but nice work, everybody.
Yeah, and I did just do a quick search before we started recording to see there are other statewide bans on wild animal acts. As of 2025, at least 12 states have barred elephants and often other wild species like big cats or bears, primates from traveling shows and circuses. There's cities and counties joining in, over 150 municipalities across 37 states like San Francisco and Boulder and Missoula, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a paradigm
Well, what's really
shift.
important about these, I mean, it's really important because of what the animals go through, because of course their lives in these like hokey traveling shows are awful. But it's so important because of what it says to the people who see them. You know, every time people see things like this, they get a message of what these animals are for, and they absorb that message. And this is just, I just was thinking that because there's this picture here, this horrible picture of this poor little elephant with flowers around her head, and all these people gawking, and they're just thinking that this is the way the world is supposed to be. And you know what? It's not.
Right. Well, Colorado's move, I think it's not just policy, it's part of this tectonic shift, I guess you could say. And I think it's great. The message is very clear. Wild animals belong in nature or sanctuaries, not cages or props. So let's move on because we have more good news, which is so great. Why don't you tell us about this one?
Yeah, this is from the UK, from Animal Rising. And there have been a number of prosecutions amongst these types of campaigners, and some of them have not turned out well, but there were 3 Animal Rising campaigners who were recently tried for public nuisance after taking action in 2022 in a dairy-focused campaign. You know, I think there was some like civil disobedience, or maybe it wasn't disobedience, whatever. They were all acquitted. And they, you know, this has been going on for a long time. They've been under this pressure. They had to go to court and they had a trial and they were all acquitted. So yay.
Wow. That's so
That
great.
made
The
me
law
happy.
doesn't always
Don't you
side
feel
with
sometimes
industry.
like public attitudes are like shift, and all of a sudden like people are a little bit more open to hearing that people are sticking up for the innocent or whatever.
Sometimes the law sides with conscience and not industry. So that
Thank
is
you.
exciting.
Thank you.
That is exciting.
It's a good bumper sticker.
Let's no, it's a terrible bumper sticker. Let's talk about protein.
All right, finally. I mean, not that I've been waiting to get to it, though I have been, but you know, this is our last article. This is an article that I thought people might find useful in the insane protein conversations that we are constantly dragged into still. This is by our friend Marina Bolotnikova, who's been on the podcast, and it's for Vox. You're being lied to about protein is the title. Yes, protein builds muscle. No, you don't need as much as lifting influencers say. And she's talking specifically about, you know, athletes and lifting influencers or fitfluencers. But of course, the whole world tells you need more protein than you do. And I'm personally experiencing that a lot because there's a lot of talk about how as you get older, you need more and more and more protein. And the other thing that's so frustrating about it is that the people who tell you this and everybody still just believes that the only source of protein is animal foods. It's unbelievable how stupid people are. I can never get over it.
I have to say too that like protein is really having a moment. Like I see it on TV constantly.
It's
and not only
that's
that,
been
but
going on for a while.
yeah, but it's also showing up. I got an ad this morning, and after this conversation, I'll get more ads because my phone is right here listening to me. But I got an ad this morning for like, are you a perimenopausal woman? Then you need more protein. Especially,
I don't know, like does perimenopause now start at 35? Like not that you're 35, but
No,
they just seem to be lowering the age that women are supposed to be panicked about their bodies.
Well,
like,
I mean, you know, I'm 45 and I would say, they say it could go on for 10 years. So I don't
know
know.
it keeps getting longer. I think it's just the whole perimenopause thing is an attempt to medicalize womanhood. All right.
However, it's
I'm
also
getting
trying to
carried away.
it's
I'm
trying to
gonna
normalize.
get emails.
It's
All right.
trying to normalize something as well. So like maybe the pendulum will find the right spot in the middle, because no one has talked about menopause or perimenopause, and in the last couple of years that's been changing, and I think that that's great. But regarding the protein part of it, I have always thought that it's way blown out of proportion how much people need to focus on protein, because we just don't look like a protein deprived country. But that being said, it is something I pay attention to, because I lift weights. I lift weights, by the way, because I got really weak. Like in the last year, I just started to hardly be able to open the door at like at the radio studio, because it's like air vacuum tight. So it's like you push it, and it was like, did someone change these doors? And then I realized, no, it's me.
Well, anyway, getting back to the article, there's a lot of detail in it. Like, she knows a lot about this because she is athletic herself. And there's a recommendation that weightlifters aim for between 0.54 and 0.73 grams of protein per pound. And a lot of the advice out there is like 1 gram of protein per pound, which is probably completely ridiculous. And she does go on that one of the reasons it's hard to determine how much, this is particularly with the aging issue, but with other issues as well, that people's muscle loss might be more due to being sedentary than not getting enough protein. It's hard to separate those things out. And we just shouldn't be worrying about it as much. We should be worrying about it a bit. We should get a variety of foods, legumes, grains, nuts, vegetables throughout the day. And as you know, I have had issues with not getting enough protein. And the whole key to it is the variety. You can't just eat one type of plant-based food that has protein and expect to get all your amino acids. Amino acids from plants are not quite as absorbable as from animals. I think, don't quote me on that. But, there are a few issues. This article goes through them all, and it's a great article to show to people who tell you, like, it just drives me crazy. Somebody said to me recently, the only source of protein I have is really eggs. Like, are you eating any other food? Because there's probably protein in all of it.
Yeah.
But people really still believe that. It's what we started out talking about, the fact that we are used to knowing things and being really sure of them. And I was talking about what's happening to the animals, but it's true about this too, that everybody else just seems to not know about. And I think it's one of the things that makes us so scared right now, not to bring it back to the difficult, what did you call it? Trump?
Yeah. Trump exacerbated trauma.
Trump exacerbated trauma, yeah.
Yeah. I think that maybe it was at some point Trump era trauma, but whatever. Tet. Okay, well, I want to continue with the good news, because our wingman of the day is almost here, and Melanie Joy probably needs no introduction, certainly to those of you tuning in right now, but just in case, she is a psychologist specializing in relationships, communication, and social change, the founder of the organization Beyond Carnism, and the author of many books. But as I mentioned earlier, perhaps the one you know the best is the absolutely groundbreaking Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. And she's here to talk about her latest book, A Half-Hearted Death Wish. So I think she's going to pop in just a second. And here she is. Welcome back to our hen house, Melanie.
Hi, it's so good to be here again and to see you again.
Yeah, I got to see you at Ava a few weeks ago. Mariann,
I haven't seen you in person, and I can't even imagine how long, but so it's lovely to see your face.
Definitely, you too. You haven't changed. I saw you, I think, over a decade ago. It was shortly after Why We Love Dogs first came out, and we were running through the rain.
In New York
somewhere.
City.
Yeah, and then we were
Midtown.
in some, I guess it was a hotel where you were staying, like in
hotel lobby.
Midtown. Or in
That's right.
Hell's Kitchen.
It was somewhere. It was a hotel I was staying at. Yeah, and it feels like, as you were just saying, yesterday feels like a lifetime ago. That really feels like multiple lifetimes ago.
100%.
Though sometimes I find that it works the other way, that seems like it just happened yesterday. Seriously, I'm probably just trying to forget what's going on in the world. But yesterday, I can't. All this week, I have been confusing what day it was, and it's not like we had Monday off. But you know how that happens when there's just too much going on. That's my excuse anyway.
So
yeah, the memory is getting all jumbled.
yeah, well, I mean, this leads me to my first question before we get into your book. My big question, this is actually why we invited you here. You live in Berlin. Can we move in with you?
My God, I would be so happy. When you and I were talking at AMA, we were talking about how we wish we lived closer. So here's a way to make that happen.
I want that to happen because I would really enjoy like evening wine time with you, but I also need to get the hell out of Dodge.
I think you'd have to adopt us though, Melanie.
Yeah,
Like,
can you adopt us?
Germany's not just going to let us
I'd have
in.
to sponsor you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to foster you or something.
Sounds great.
great.
Okay, well, Vicky
Mom.
can drop
I'm going
the
to call you
paperwork.
Mom for the rest of this interview.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. But yeah, all right, let's talk about your book because it's so good and it's so different from anything that we've ever interviewed you about. And it's called A Half-Hearted Death Wish. And I got to read it early on. So you have now birthed it. So Mazel Tov, congratulations. How does it feel to have this out in the world?
Thank you. It feels great. And thank you again for your support. We were talking while I was writing it. You were one of my inspirations for writing a book. You have had conversations with me to help me really think about the best use of my time and directions I could be going in. So I appreciate it so much. And it feels really good. It actually felt really good writing it, which was a pleasant surprise for me because it's my 8th book. My first 7 books were nonfiction, and I was always a very, very unhappy writer. Writing nonfiction was something I never enjoyed doing, and I used to dread doing. And I only did it because I would have an idea that I felt like needed to be written about, needed to be out there, and I felt like I was the one to do it. And so I would do it out of obligation. And it was a pleasant surprise to discover that I actually don't hate writing. I just hate writing nonfiction.
After 7 books, it's an awkward time to discover that, but I'm glad you did. I hope there'll be many more fiction books coming out.
I can't even tell you how much that resonates with me. I only wrote one fiction book and I loved every second of it. There was this whole inner world. Was that what the process was like for you? Just like thinking about the characters throughout the day. Tell us a little bit about the process of writing, and then we're going to get into the actual plot and the actual book itself.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I will say, having read your fiction book, that it's great. And I loved reading it. I loved the experience. And I can't wait until that's birthed and out there in the world.
It's a very long gestation period. Like
Yeah.
the kicks are off the charts.
I get it. And I know. It was interesting because I had always wanted to write a fiction book. I always wanted to write a novel. I was always a creative, actually. And the expectation for me with my life was that I was going to go into the arts somehow. I mean, my mother was an artist when she met my father. My father was a professional musician. And that's where I excelled in school, particularly music, but also in other forms of the arts. So the idea was like I was supposed to get a scholarship to go to music school. Wow. And if I didn't decide to do that or I didn't do that, I was going to go into something, whether it was like dramatic arts or writing, whatever. So, but that didn't happen. That wasn't my path. I ended up going into academia and sort of got my creative fulfillment through writing my ideas down or writing and directing videos that we have. And I just told myself like, okay, this is like whatever, scratching the creative itch, but it wasn't really. And then when I decided to write fiction, finally to write the book, I was pleasantly surprised and I was very immersed in it. And I was loving getting to know the characters. And I mean, it wasn't like I just sat down and like let the book write itself or something. I mean, I did do plotting and, a lot of research before writing the book just to learn how to write a fiction book. But then when I finally was able to sit down and write, I was in flow, for the first time in a very, very long time. And it wasn't all flow because writing is hard, but enough of it was that it felt very aligned. And I was like, oh, it took me 58 years to figure out that this is like what makes my heart sing the way that it does. And that's not to say that I wasn't happy or haven't been happy running Beyond Carnism and doing the work that we do. Yeah. I think it's great. And I'm incredibly privileged to live my dream. I know that. But it was a very fun and an enlightening process for me.
You mentioned, Melanie, that your other books, I think you said you had an idea that you really wanted to come out, and with the work process and whatever. Was this book also an idea that you wanted to come out, or was it just like the characters started to live and live their own lives, and you wrote it down?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So I knew that I wanted to write fiction, but I didn't feel justified in writing fiction. I didn't feel like I could give myself permission to do it, but I knew that I wanted to do it. And because of that, I never let myself really think about the idea of what I would write, because I knew that as soon as I started kind of like noodling different topics for a book, that suddenly I would get in this creative spin and frenzy. And I didn't want that to happen because I didn't want to be like basically carrying this baby for so long. So I kind of forced it out of my mind and I didn't play around with it. But the minute that I realized this is the right thing for me to do, and no, I wouldn't say the minute, the day after I had a conversation with somebody and was like, okay, I'm going to actually really consider doing this. I got on a plane to get home from somewhere I had been. I sat on the plane and I thought, okay, let me open my mind and think about this now. And about an hour and a half later, I had just taken 10 pages of notes, and basically the concept for the story and the whole arc just kind of like came out. And it was a very weird thing. It just felt like it just kind of came out. And then from there, I was structuring and things like that. But a lot of the ideas, they just kind of came to me as I was filling in this outline that had come to my mind. It was almost like the characters were emerging as I was writing them.
I'm so happy for you. That is like the best feeling. Like, and it also, what you're talking about speaks to the importance of, activists and longtime activists and advocates just really nurturing our creative selves too. I mean, like, I feel like that about Mariann because she had a career as a lawyer. And I see you as a very creative person. And, and my wife also works in academia and is like probably the most creative person I know. I think it's almost like our imperative to nurture that part of ourselves.
Well, I mean, I just want to add that,
Yeah.
and I think you alluded to this as well, Melanie. There's creativity in almost every endeavor. It's different types of creativity. And
that's right.
It's not just artistic creativity, but every endeavor is much more enjoyable if you're bringing your creativity to it and you're allowed to do that and able to do it.
Yeah, that's true. And that's really, really well said. And it's really a matter of like finding out what kinds of creativity really help you kind of feel sustainable and get into your own flow. And it's going to look different for different types of people. But like, to your point, Jasmin, too, like we as activists and advocates, like we need to nurture ourselves because it's not easy being awake to the fact that we live in the midst of a global atrocity. I mean, among other things. And also because creativity, I mean, it plays artists. Let's just look at artists. Artists in all shapes and forms have played an incredibly important role in bringing about social transformation throughout history, whether it's through music or through movies or through writing or other forms of creativity. And it does tend to be, I think a lot of people, especially activists, we don't always give ourselves permission to do what fuels us because there's so much that we need to do as activists and also just kind of keeping our lives together so we can do our activism.
Yeah, totally. So well said. Okay. A half-hearted death wish, which I'm holding here, has been described as a psychological suspense novel with surreal twists and offbeat humor. And the novel, it does blend these very heavy psychological themes with like moments of absurdity and a dark humor that really spoke to my soul. So tell me about that balance and like how you see humor as a tool for dealing with, layered or maybe painful topics.
Humor is just really, really important in my life anyway. And people have different relationships with humor, right? For some people, humor is not that important to them. For a lot of people, humor is an important tool and it can be a coping mechanism to cope with things that are difficult. And it just, when we can see the humor in things that we can see the humor in, it helps us take ourselves in life a lot or at least a little less seriously. And it can help sort of like lighten heaviness as well. And it just makes our experience in our lives more enjoyable. And humor has always played a very important role in my life. And this is also sort of a part of my personality, I guess you could say, that hasn't come forth as much in my work
Right.
in my writing. I mean, certainly in my in-person trainings, people can see it,
Yeah.
but certainly not in the rest of my work so much. So it was really nice to be able to bring it into the book. And I wanted to write a book that was sort of in the, I don't know, I guess in the vein of, I don't know what the style you would call is, like Life is Beautiful or Baby Reindeer, which are about topics that are serious and really deal with trauma, but to be able to weave together like not just lightness, but actual humor in order to make the experience like more, I don't know what I would say, more palatable and actually make the experience enjoyable. I mean, I
Yeah.
just think if you can laugh, that goes a long way.
Yeah, totally. And you are a very funny, witty, like it's like a smart humor as a person. And I think that really came through. Something that readers will learn almost right away in the book is that the protagonist, Emma Parkland, faces a mysterious and deadly condition called sudden onset suicidality. So how did you develop this condition and what does it symbolize in the story?
Well, yeah. So the story is about this psychologist who's in excellent mental health, and she wakes up one day to discover that her will to live has completely vanished, and it's been replaced by a burning desire to die. So she just basically becomes suicidal, and she's like, has no idea where this came from, and she's almost thinking of it as like some sort of weird psychological flu.
I have to say, Melanie,
And-
this sounds hilarious so far.
It actually is, but go on, Melanie.
Hence the not funny part of it.
Right. Funny, not funny.
So she's on this journey of discovery to try to figure out what's wrong with her, because she knows, as a psychologist especially, that the unconscious has a way of, getting its needs met. And if she's unconsciously and even consciously suicidal, then she's probably going to, eventually kill herself whether she wants to or not. And she needs to figure out what's wrong with her before she kills herself and basically destroys the lives of everyone who depends on her, including her own life. And she does discover early on in the book that she has a condition called sudden onset suicidality, or SOS. And it's like a bizarre, very rare condition that has a 94% fatality rate and no known cure. And this condition it's made up. So all of the other psychological conditions that I describe in the book, and some of them are very strange, like Alice in Wonderland syndrome, right? And they are real, they exist, but SOS I actually made up. And so Emma is on a search for the cause, to what caused her SOS, so that she can then hopefully find the cure.
It's a very, very clever book. And I'm just curious, was any of it based on your life? I mean, I'm seeing a psychologist and a psychologist. Tell us a little bit about that. Are there little echoes of Melanie in here?
Well, I mean, I think all works of fiction are, at least partly autobiographical. So the short answer is yes. I had one person who read it and like finished it and then got on a call with me and was like, "Hey, Melanie, just want to ask you, before I give you any feedback, are you okay?" Yeah.
Oh, that's
I can see
funny.
that.
Yeah. It was quite sweet. And so I'm not suicidal. And Emma is definitely modeled after me. And she's actually an amalgam. Is that the right word? She's modeled after me and my best friend, who's a psychotherapist, the two of us. So, yeah, so some of it, and some characters are characters from my life, actually, with different names. And a lot of it is actually made up. Yeah, but I can say, I mean, one character I can say, Emma's brother, Nick, is my brother. Like, I didn't change anything about him except the age of his kids. But I don't say anything, like, he doesn't look bad in the book, so I can actually say that.
Oh, I love that. So I know that I was reading some of the reviews, which are fantastic. And I do want to encourage our listeners as well to go to Amazon and leave a review, even if you're not buying it on Amazon. It's very helpful for the author if you do that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it really is. I mean, it's hugely helpful. And I know that a lot of people really appreciated the dark humor and kind of the, unusual humor. And a lot of people called it a transformative journey. So what is the key takeaway that you hope that readers walk away with?
Well, first of all, I just hope people enjoy themselves reading it. I hope that people can sit down with the book and feel entertained and laugh and also learn something. I think that, a good book is one that leaves the reader a little bit better off than they were before they picked it up.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to them. So I don't know if there's one key takeaway or multiple key
Yeah.
takeaways, for anybody. I just hope that people come through this journey and they've enjoyed themselves and they feel a little bit better off. And I do weave, psychological insights, you can say, throughout the book. I mean, Emma's a psychologist and she's seeing her clients throughout it. So we've got these, characters who are bringing their stories to her, and she's helping them unravel some of their problems, even as she's like unraveling herself.
I love the fact that this was a gift for you, Melanie, like as a writer, to bring life to this book. And now you're offering it as a gift to your readers too, that, it's something we can enjoy. I just want to talk about fiction briefly. How do you think fiction can help us develop empathy for others, including animals, in ways that nonfiction maybe can't?
It's a great question. I mean, they've done studies and looked at, people who are fiction readers versus people who don't read fiction that often. I guess people, who tend to read fiction and people who don't, and found that reading fiction does help people increase their empathy, their empathic capacity. It invites, if you're skillful with your writing, right, you create a protagonist who's reliable, who's relatable, who you can identify with, who you can trust. You trust the author to take you on this journey of discovery, because the protagonist's journey of discovery is also the reader's journey of discovery in many ways. And fiction enables us to maybe look at issues that we would normally not want to look at because we feel safe enough to do so. Like if you trust the author, you're safe with the author. They're not going to drop something on you that's going to cause you to feel unsafe or traumatized. They're going to kind of guide you through, bring you through the process of the book in a way that feels, maybe at times challenging to your beliefs and to your experience, but never unsafe.
Yeah.
And this gives you the opportunity to look at issues through the eyes of the protagonist, not through your eyes, but through the eyes of the protagonist, a protagonist who you trust, written by an author who you've come to trust, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. I think that you're really pointing to the power of the arts in general. It's something that we've been passionate about here at Our Hen House since Our Hen House started, just by interviewing artists of all kinds, and the people's defenses are down. They're like, oh, no one's whatever proselytizing at me or something. They're just they're on the journey, and then it starts to seep in. And yet, to me, the elephant in the room, or I'll say the cow in the room, is what's up with vegan fiction? Like, where are our characters? Where is there space for this in the publishing world? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something you and I have talked about, and I wouldn't call this book vegan fiction, and it is the novelization of my work, essentially, right? So it deals with themes that are present in my work, including one theme, which is how we relate to other animals. And when you look at the space, the fiction space, there are very few books in that space that have relatable vegan characters, for example, or themes that are, engage in any really appreciable way with our relationship with other animals, in particular with our relationship with farmed animals.
Right.
And so I did want to make sure to include these themes in my book, and to weave the themes, the issues that I talk about, in my work into this book. And we need more. We need people in this space, writing fiction, whether it's short stories, whether it's, novels, whatever, even creative blog posts.
How do you write about vegan characters without condemning yourself to having only vegan readers? How do you work it in a way that's the non-vegan reader does feel safe, but also feels a little challenged?
Well, I mean, I think that one way is just through having, I would say a healthy or a skillful intention in the writing of the book, right? So I'll speak for myself. I did not write this book to be a quote unquote vegan book, and I wouldn't call it that. My goal of the book is not to change people's minds or change people's hearts. My goal is to provide a creative experience for people to look at the world through the eyes of characters that I've created, and to take away from that whatever they will, and just to create characters whose dignity is clear and is honored, and who aren't stereotypes or tropes, and to have conversations that are engaged with some of these issues without there being some sort of a hidden agenda. I think the problem is that when you've got a hidden agenda, to use your creativity as a form of advocacy, which you can do, that's fine as long as you're clear about the agenda. But with this book, I have a vegan character in it, but it's one of many characters and one of many themes that are explored within this sort of broader meta theme of skillful ways of relating. It's not just how we relate to other animals or farmed animals, but how do we relate to ourselves? How do we relate to each other? How do we relate as social groups? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it's, really keeping, I guess I would call it, other-centered writing or non-narcissistic writing. Like when you're writing and creating something, you always have in mind, like every paragraph, every sentence. I'm so aware that like people have such limited time and bandwidth. And if they're choosing to stop what they're doing to read something that I've written or listen to something that I have to say, I want that to provide value to them. I want it to help them to be a little better off than they were before they came to it. And what that means is creating for their experience, not creating to influence their decisions, if that makes sense.
No, it totally
well
makes sense.
said.
It sounds very challenging because, we are who we are, but it's a great goal. And I'm really looking forward to seeing whether you pulled it off, Melanie.
But I have to say too, Melanie, that like what you're describing in what I'm hearing is that you're normalizing the vegan character. And
Right.
we had that, I'll talk about like TV and film, but we had that moment with like gay characters where if there was a gay character, it was about them being gay for a really long time. And then somehow
And then they usually had to die at the end.
Right. Well, lesbians certainly always died.
Lesbians
But
had to die.
But sort of like at the end of the 90s, I would say around that time, beginning of the aughts, I guess you call it, that it started to become like, oh, that character is just gay, but it's not about them being gay. And that is something we need with vegans, and you're doing that. Does this resonate with you? Am I putting words into your mouth?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, you said it perfectly, right? So it's that it's not, this is why I wouldn't say this is a vegan book, right? There are many different types of characters representing many different types of themes. And, each one has their own story, their own experience. Obviously, they all have to fit together and come together in the end with their own journeys and their own stories. But it's not using this character to kind of like carry the book. It's normalizing. It's like usually when you have a vegan character in a book, and I have a lot of characters in my book. I mean, not a lot so that I'm actually intimidated by books that have too many characters because my memory is not good enough to follow. But I have a number of characters in the book, and it's not stereotyping. It's not having somebody's identity, or somebody's, whatever I would say, ideology become their whole identity. It's a part of a whole. It's like, this is a person who happens to be vegan, and this is their experience.
By the way, I have a book recommendation for you. I finished it today. It's called Death Valley by Melissa Broder.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, and it totally has it's dark humor, and you won't get confused in it. It's not, by the way, for our listeners, it really has nothing to do with veganism, but I think you'll like it from a psychological perspective. Death Valley by Melissa Broder. Are you going to write more fiction in the future, Melanie?
The million-dollar question. So if I could just sort of snap my fingers and change my life, I would love to just probably dedicate the next few years to writing novels and maybe more short stories. I don't know, but that's not going to happen yet. I want to see how well A Half-Hearted Death Wish does, how widely circulated it gets, because I can only really justify writing if the writing reaches enough people at the moment anyway. And I'm working on some other projects right now. I'm working on a documentary film project, actually. So it's taking up some time. My hope is to come back and to write at least one other novel.
You're just going to dangle that documentary thing right there and just no follow-up, is there anything you could say about it or no?
We're collecting footage for a sizzle reel, which is a reel that you take to streamers, and then we'll decide from there where we take things. But it's basically Why We Love Dogs comes to a documentary. Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it would be bad if you limited it to just Why We Love Dogs. That's been done.
That's so funny.
No, that's very, very exciting news.
We have to start to close up, but I just want to acknowledge something you just said, which is you want to see how this does and how far it's circulated around. And I'm just so fascinated by that perspective, because it's sort of like, well, what is art and what is advocacy and where's the line between them? Like, I mean, if you greatly enjoyed writing this, is that good enough? Or does it need to be read widely? Like, I don't think there is an answer to that.
Well, there is an answer for
Okay,
me
what?
anyway. If I did do it again and this didn't circulate well, I would have to do it on weekends and evenings
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
salary is paid by our donors.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
mean,
if I
real
use
life.
money, right. So, and that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of this was written in my, sort of quote unquote free time, but not all of it.
Yeah.
And all the proceeds go to Beyond Carnism. And this is sort of a part of what we offer. And I could take a sabbatical and write a novel. So that's possible too.
Right.
So that's the only justification. It's a financial justification for doing it.
Okay.
But
That makes
yeah,
sense.
But we'll see.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I mean, I'm glad that you're on at this time of year too, because people always want like a good beach read or just like summer read. This is actually perfect for that. The book is called A Half-Hearted Death Wish by Melanie Joy. How can our readers find you online, support your efforts, etc.?
Thank you so much. The book is available everywhere that you can get books, and they can follow me on carnism.org or carnism.org or melaniejoy.org or both.
Amazing. Well, I hope that there's more fiction in the future, and I think this is going to do really well and in the ways
Yes,
you want
thank
it to.
you.
So thank you so much for joining us today on Our Hen House, and thanks to you for tuning in. Subscribe on your favorite podcatcher or on YouTube or both. And don't forget, I said to leave a comment for Melanie's book on Amazon. Also, while you're commenting, you might as well leave a comment or a review for Our Hen House on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube or wherever you like to take in your media. And that's it for us for this week. Thanks again, and thanks again to Melanie, and thanks again to you, and we'll see you next time.